Hello again, everyone. As promised, coming back with a video about why the whole Russia-Ukraine thing is going on. I'm gonna keep it fairly bird's eye view. Like, I don't have like this super detailed understanding of it like somebody like Destiny or like Nick Fuentes might have, which if you haven't seen their debate on the subject, I'm like 45 minutes into it. It's very helpful. You'll probably have figured by now that I lean far more towards the right, and thereby the sort of Nick Fuentes perspective, I guess, in the term of the internet, since the American right is just, you know, the mainstream American right is retarded. But it's pretty straightforward. It's like if you look at a map of NATO from its inception in the late 90s till, let's say, a couple of months ago, it has expanded eastward pretty consistently. And so from the perspective of the Russians, which is something that seemingly everybody in America seems incapable of fathoming, it's a very severe threat to their strategic security interests or whatever, because if Ukraine or Belarus are part of NATO, I mean, that's a staging ground for NATO and thereby American empire troops and American funded nonsense to basically go in there. Another point to that is, you know, the principle of mutually assured destruction is kind of undermined if, let's say, the NATO side can get missiles into Russian territory before the Russians can shoot missiles back. That's why, or so I hear, you know, when I think it was Reagan was talking about the Star Wars program, where he wanted to basically encircle the entire continental United States in like these missile defense domes. You know, we didn't do that because that would threaten the principle of mutually assured destruction, where it's like, okay, now we have to have this arms race where one side is stockpiling shitloads of nuclear weapons just to make it through the missile defense dome in the event of a nuclear exchange. And so with Ukraine being a member of NATO, it almost incentivizes a first strike so that there isn't anything to worry about on the way back when the other side goes to respond, because there is no response. So I know everybody says NATO is strategic and defensive, or defensive, not strategic, and rather, and I guess on paper it is, but that's kind of a juvenile take, because it's like, of course, I mean, this is like, again, another thing that many people in the West have forgot is the principles of statesmanship and whatnot. Like, yeah, okay, if the Mexicans were to enter into a defensive strategic pact with Russia, and it was, you know, oh, it's all for defense, you know, do you think people here in Texas would really buy that? Do you think Americans would really buy that? No, I don't think so. And I guess something I probably should have touched on in the beginning is just this whole, everybody keeps, oh, it's wrong, it's unethical. It's like, just throw that out the window. Throw that out the window. There's nothing, ethics doesn't play into statecraft and statesmanship and all this stuff, because states fundamentally exists as monopolies on force, which, per my like moral view of the world, at least, the initiation of force is wrong, thereby making the existence of any state just in itself unethical, because it's based fundamentally in violence. That's for a separate talk, but it's like, to hear people in the United States talk about how it's unethical for, you know, Russians to go and preemptively invade Ukraine to secure their strategic interests, when we literally just did a horrible job via our fake president of withdrawing from a 20-year war in the Middle East, where all we did was preemptively invade them, and they're on the other side of the world. At least Ukraine shares a land border with Russia. It's like, so the whole ethical thing, on top of being like ridiculous and wholly unapplicable to the whole sphere of what you do as a state, it's just like, get the fuck out of here with that. You know, especially like when you're from the empire saying that. It's like, all right, you can go sit over here while the real adults have a conversation about, you know, geopolitics, I guess. So it's like, really, everybody seems to have forgotten about the Cuban Missile Crisis, where, you know, that was across the Caribbean Sea. Russia was, or then the USSR was putting, or wanted to put, nuclear missiles right there. And we almost ended the world over it, dude, 30 seconds to midnight. Like, come on. So this whole, instead of doing this thing where, okay, we're going to kick Russia off of SWIFT, which I think is a watershed moment in the destruction of the US dollar as the global reserve currency, which has a whole incredible host of things that are going to filter on down through the ages. I mean, just we've got, maybe not even the ages, maybe like a couple decades, because it's like, you know, you've got $160 trillion worth of unfunded liabilities, or whatever the hell it is. It might be $1 billion, I don't know. It's some big ass number of just Medicaid and Social Security that there's no way that tax revenue in the US could ever pay for, even if it was ratcheted up to levels that we've never seen before. It just can't happen, which means we have to be able to print money, which means other people have to buy and use our currency, which means that to just summarily cut Russia off instead of going to the negotiation table from utilizing and selling our currency or however that fucking works at the nitty-gritty level is retarded. That was probably the stupidest thing that, I mean, other than the COVID overreaction that could have possibly done. So it's amazing because you've got this country, Russia, that does this preemptive invasion in this land border and potentially now just destroyed the U.S. empire because of, you know, the hubris involved in the American regime when it comes to negotiation for basically everybody except for Trump that I can think of anyway. So a little bit of a tangent there, my apologies. But yeah, so basically at the end of the day, it's pretty straightforward. Russia is preemptively invading Ukraine invading Ukraine. I don't know why I keep saying preemptively, but they went in and invaded just to secure their strategic posture because it's unacceptable for them to have what is effectively a rival literally have a strategic launching point right on their border. I mean, that's, you know, America would do the exact same thing. We probably will freak out over that in generations or a generation or two down the road when, you know, we're no longer a global empire because of stupid shit like the Afghan war for 20 years, everything we did over there, this shit show that the American regime has orchestrated over their ridiculously retarded response to what Russia's doing in Ukraine, and it's just unbelievable. So to see all these Ukrainian flags everywhere and all this bullshit, it's like, geez, you know. A lot of us did learn from all the bullshit that happened with the beer bug, but most people didn't. You know, I'm pretty sure that CNN could tell the American people to eat their own shit, and they would probably do it. So hope you enjoyed. Have a good weekend.